18 because we look to balance over this cycle, not from year to year. So when you look down 2018, capital tax is essentially property tax that's moved over to the capital plan. We just reference it as capital tax. The general debenture that is shown there is the capacity left for borrowing. You can see that's $68 million in 18. There is some borrowing within this cycle, but it's only $14 million. Facility renewal reserve is $944,000. That's for the renovation and repair of facilities. And that essentially comes from the operating plan as well. Transportation levy reserve sits at $4.5 million. What that is, it relates to arterial roads and the construction of arterial roads. So there are some limitations to what that funding can be used for because the contributions come from developers. Future expenditure reserve, that includes all projects that have not been completed yet, as well as when projects are over and under in their final cost, there is an unallocated piece left. So what we've done is that's the unallocated piece, and we've used just about all of it. So by the end of 18, there's $36,000 left. Public housing reserve is $281,000. That is for projects related to creating social housing. The public reserve is a statutory reserve, and it gets funds when developers give funds instead of land for MR. And that has to be used for the creation of park. Fleet reserve, you can see that's at $1.3 million. It's been reduced because of the changes we made in the operating plan. That's intended for replacement of vehicles when they come to the end of their life cycle. Fire equipment reserve at $95,000. That's for the smaller equipment. It's not meant for the fire trucks. The fire trucks are replaced for the fleet reserve. Financial stabilization is $6.8 million. That should go up once we sell some of those social houses. That will offset the land purchase that council did a few months back. And that's meant to offset any deficiencies that we have year to year. Cemetery reserves at $2.7 million. That is for the perpetual care of the cemetery once it does close. Pinnacle special tax, that's for the water feature over there, and those are contributions made by the residents in that area. Winter stabilization reserve at $2.8 million. That is for years when it snows significantly, as we've had in the last year. RCMP reserve, $316,000. That's intended to fund off up to 2 RCMP members when their vacancies are lower than we expected, because we do budget for vacancies. MSI is a Municipal Sustainability Initiative. It's a provincial grant. You can see we've used a significant amount of it. We're sitting with $30,000 at the end of 18. Metropolitan funding is a new program. We do qualify for it. We do have $1 million left at the end of 18. And the gas tax fund is a federal program, and we have $12,000 at the end of 18. So overall, you can see that our funding sources are fairly well depleted. There is not a lot left. So it points out really 3 inherent risks. The first one being that this is a 4-year period, and emerging projects will come up over the 4-year period. What's occurred in the past is that we've always had a fairly substantial funding source set aside for those types of projects. In this case, we have very little ability to move on any of those emerging priorities. So when council goes forward with this, if it remains the same, we'll probably have to have a different process than what we've done in the past. In the past, it's been usually referenced off to administration to find a funding source, and we would come back with a funding source. In this case, there may not be a funding source depending on the size of the project. So what you as a council will need to do is to prioritize these projects. Something new comes up, you may have to consider dropping something else, because the way it sits now, there's very little room to move. The second risk that we have is that projects are based on cost estimates, and to get a better cost estimate, first of all, there's 2 pieces to it. You'd have to get into detailed design, which has a cost to it. So what we do is we don't want to go there until council actually approves the project, otherwise it's a throwaway cost. So the detailed design will give you better costing, And the second piece is really where the market is at when we put it out for bid. And that we really have limited control over. And the third risk is the provincial government. Provincial government has a significant hole in their budget with energy prices just above $50 a barrel today. They've talked about remaining consistent on health and education programs, which is the bulk of their budget. So there is a risk that our grants could be reduced for some period of time. And that happened a few years ago. Originally, MSI was supposed to go up at a certain rate, and then there was a bit of a economy slump, and then they curtailed it. They pulled it back a bit. So there was a very good chance that they could pull back here again. We don't know. So those are the three risks that go with it here, and so that's my first topic. Do you have any questions about that topic?
Councillor Rice? Yeah, we're using microphones. Councillor Rice?
Dumb question, when's MSI renewal?
I mean, how long is the program?
Yeah.
I believe it was just renewed not too long ago, so I think it's good for another 5 years.
Okay, so we're not anticipating extra money in this cycle.
No, what we've done is we've held it at the 2014 rate. We've held it consistent at that because we're not sure where it's going to go. But with the recent changes in the energy sector, there is a risk that it could go down from that. And we've already allocated funding based on the 2014 amount. So the risk being that we may have to reprioritize projects if it should be lowered.
One more question, if I may. The reserve, fleet reserve, it's showing at the end $1.3 million. Now, is that what would be left in the fund, or that's what we were going to add to the fund?
That's where the estimated balance will sit at the end of 2018.
So it's sort of like playing Russian roulette.
Well, we did pull out a significant amount of dollars there to better the operational plan. I've talked to Fleet about it. I mean, they're fine with it. It will be a challenge, but it was a challenge over the last few years as well. But when we go down to 2019 in the following cycle, I mean, what you'll be faced with is there'll be an increase again because it's still not at the right amount. It is bearable at this point, but it's not ideal.
So we chose to not put money away for a rainy day in order to look good on the operational side.
Essentially, yes, we chose to reduce the transfers to better the tax increases in the operational plan.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Clayton?
Thank you, Mayor Gibbon. 2 questions. Mr. Anderson, if you could tell me, just explain in more detail, I'm assuming that any transportation needs within our city that were funded in the capital plan have come out of the transportation levy. There's nothing else in the current capital plan that can come out of that, because it seems like at the end there still sits a fair amount of money there.
Well, many of the transportation projects come from other sources. Really, the transportation levy reserves intended for when you build a 2-road arterial road, it's for building the further 2 lanes to the road. So there are restrictions to it. It can only be used for certain uses. We've maximized what we can use it for in this cycle, and anything over and above that goes outside of the restriction on the fund.
And if I can, a second question. Thanks, Mayor Gibbon. I'm curious, and I know it's kind of a big question, but maybe on a broad level you can explain to me how taxes are affected if we use more of a general debenture.
Well, there's 2 aspects to that. If it's capital tax, yes, the capital tax would be reduced, and then it depends on the term of the borrowing, because the borrowing impacts the operational side as well. I mean, there's debt servicing, which includes the principal and interest, that would come out of the operational side. So it really depends on what term it would be for. Traditionally, what we've done with borrowing is leave it to facility type projects. For sure, the life of the asset should at least match the term of the borrowing, and probably even further. We've always taken the borrowing less than the lifetime of a facility. So the adjustments would be, yes, it would give some impact on the tax increase side. However, it doesn't fully realize that savings because there is the debt servicing that goes along with it. And it really depends on the amount and the term of the venture as well.
I guess just to follow up to that, so can you explain to me in a sort of an economical viewpoint, with a young community that currently, with a currently such a young community, and we'll assume that as they age, hopefully they live in Grand Prairie and they financially get more stable, what's the thought in regards to having a lower property tax amount, say for example for the next 10 years while young families are starting out, and borrowing more and less property tax, because assuming that they're going to live here for 20 years, as they get more stabilized financially, they can afford to slowly increase their property taxes and pay off the debt that we've used to pay off for more capital projects.
Well, there always is an intergenerational issue, and the idea is to try and balance it to a long term, which would be the borrowing, which everyone is paying for now as well with their property taxes. So we do have a fairly significant debt load. So it does deal with that issue of deferring it and bringing it in over the long term. And a lot of it is coming from grants and reserves that exist now. So I see a mixed approach to it now. Mm-hmm. Is there an ideal? No. There is no ideal community to community. It's based on the community and their desires.
Mr. Anderson, maybe, and so you've given, in your chart here, you've given how much borrowing capacity the city has. What is the city's current debt? How much debt are we currently carrying?
I believe it's around 140 million.
Thanks very much. Councillor Radburn.
Thank you, William. A couple things, I might. First of all, just to affirm, I guess, or confirm, in terms of prioritizing projects, we still have that opportunity annually. When we do our annual reviews, we can at that point also choose not to proceed with something, given what happens with these identified 3 risks that you've stated. Is that correct?
Well, council creates the budget, and council can amend the budget at any time they wish. If you wanted to pass a budget at the next council meeting, you can come back a week later and say you want to relook at the budget again. So you always have the ability to prioritize. What I was indicating is that it's really never come to that in the past. The capital plan was built and things were added to it. What I'm indicating is that this time you may find that you have to swap off projects with what's in there with what's emerging. So that's a bit of a different situation. And in order to do that, you need to define some evaluation criteria on how you're going to evaluate them, so that you can set some priorities to them.
And I think that was part of the result of, I think we ended up going over about 6 million to what admin recommended with respect to the capital plan. I think that was a number that was over and above what admin had recommended for the capital plan. But my other question is just, can you give us an idea in terms of 2019? So how much capital tax monies do we use typically in an annual budget? So in 2019, how do you determine what capital tax capacity will be there?
What we do from plan to plan is we look at the capital plan and the operational plan as a whole, because they're very reflective of each other. The property taxes go into the operational side, and then a certain amount is moved over to the capital plan as capital tax. So when CLT reviews it, they try and find that balance between here's the number of capital projects that are needed, and here's what we need in the operational side. So is there a clear-cut cookie approach? No, there isn't.
Right.
It's really based on the situation and the needs at that time. And so that's what we bring to council for as a recommended plan, and then you adjust it accordingly. So there is no hard, fast rule, this is the capital tax and this is what it will be. It depends.
And any of the other funding sources, how do you determine what's going to be there in 2019? Like, do we facility renewal? Do we put money in from the operation plan to re-energize that reserve, future expenditure? Is that, yeah, so tell me what happens to those kind of reserves?
Well, the reserves we do have control over. The capital tax we have control over. The one we don't have control over are the grants, MSI, Metropolitan Funding, Gas Tax Fund. Those are decisions outside of this room. However, the other ones you do have full control over.
Thank you, Mayor Gibbon.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Everin. Any further questions for Ken at this point? Councillor Rice?
Okay, you talked about us being able to change our mind, but there's a lot of commitments entered into, so we wouldn't be able to change our mind on all the items. Some we would have entered into contracts or agreements or whatever.
Well, most of these projects are for a 4-year period. Most of the commitments do not exist at this point, if that's what you're referring to.
But they would as the years go by.
As we go by, yes, as we get into, we decide to go forward on detailed design and a number of projects,
Yeah.
we're already getting into it. You haven't made the commitment to actually construct it, but you've already put money into the project, so then it gets the general feeling that I've already committed to this project, so I need to conclude this project. But you're right, as we go down the road here for the next 4 years, commitments will arise at various points, and then it becomes irreversible. Or it becomes reversible, but with a penalty.
Okay. Councillor Rice? Anything else in the queue with questions for Ken? So that being the case, then I think we'll move on to our round table. Ken, did you have anything? Oh, what? There's no other slide. You didn't give us any other. Okay, you've got another point. Go ahead, Mr. Anderson.
What I wanted to talk about was the one-time funding versus sustained funding and how they each impact the tax rates in a multi-year budget. So, I mean, the concepts of one-time funding versus sustained funding is fairly simplistic. The capital plan is built mostly around one-time funding. The funding goes in, the project gets done, there is no more funding. However, there is the odd program within the capital plan as well. For example, road overlay and rehab. That's a consistent amount year to year. So that is more of a sustained funding program. When you look at the operational side, for the most part, that's sustained funding. It's program funding. There is some one-time funding in there, but most of it is sustained funding. So then the differences of how you impact a tax increase, and I'll illustrate this with a few examples so you know what you need to do if you want to do something here. So I'll start off with the sustained funding. I mean, that's the easier one. It's the one-time funding that becomes confusing. You really have to think it through. Okay, sustained funding, so if you came up in $1 million equals approximately 1%. And our current tax rates for the 4 years are sitting at 4.2%. So if you found $1 million in a program, a sustained funding amount, and you decided to reduce it in 15, that would bring the tax rate increase for 15 down to 3.2%, and the other years would stay at 4.2% because those costs would never come back. And if you wanted to reduce the across the board 4.2 to 3.2, you would still do the $1 million in 15 to bring it down to 3.2. You do a further $1 million in 16, 17, and 18. So to bring 4.2 to 3.2 across the board in sustained funding or program funding requires $4 million. Now, when we get to one-time funding, it's significantly different. What happens is you look at the capital plan here and you decide to defer or unfund a project for $1 million. And then you think, well, this is good. 15 goes down to 3.2 and everything stays the same. Well, no, it doesn't. It's not the way it works. Is that when you get to 2016, not only do you need the 4.2%, you need to pick up that base that you've reduced in 15 year over year. So you're really going up to 5.2. So what you have is a 3.2, 5.2, 4.2, and 5.2. So what you need to do to bring the following year back down again is you need to add find another $1 million for 16. And then what that gives you then is you're just moving it ahead. It's very much like a wave. You're just pushing the wave ahead here, year after year. So if you added the $1 million to 16, you'd have 3.2, 4.2, 5.2, 4.2. So then you got to add another $1 million to 17, and that pushes it forward to 18. So at the end of the day, you need $4 million to take it to 3.2, 4.2, 4.2, 4.2, and you've created a bit of an issue going into 19, but that's down the road. Now, if you wanted to go, as I talked about the previous case about going from 4.2 to 3.2 across the board, well, we already know to get down to 3.2 and hold the other years constant is $4 million right off the bat. So you've got to add another $1 million to 16 and 17 and 18, and this goes on. So what you wind up having is that to go from 4.2 to $3.2 million requires $10 million of one-time funding to get to that amount. So it's not easy. What takes you $10 million in one-time funding takes you $4 million in program or sustained funding. So if it's your intent to do a significant reduction to the property tax increase, you got a lot of work to do. And if it's going to be smaller type projects, it's going to be very time-consuming and painful process. My recommendation to you is that in order to mitigate the risks that I just indicated within the capital plan, is if you decide to unfund projects, is to put those resources back to their funding sources to allow you to mitigate those risks, as opposed to pushing everything over and say, well, we're going to reduce taxes by this amount. At the same time, we know we have significant risks sitting in the current plan. So, if you have any questions about that piece?
So Ken, just to clarify that last statement, so are you saying then your recommendation would be unfund projects? Sorry, if council chooses to unfund projects, fine. But your recommendation would be to leave the funding available, not to spend it on other projects to reduce the tax rate. Is that what I'm?
Correct. What I'm saying is if you unfund projects, don't move those savings back to the operational side to reduce the tax increase. Leave them in the funding sources as on this chart, and that allows you the ability to deal with emerging issues, costing issues, risks regarding provincial grants, and that will help mitigate that risk, as opposed to just lowering the tax rates, and we're still sitting here with this, I think it's fairly significant risk.
Okay, thanks. Okay, any questions for Ken on that section? Councilor Rice?
Annexation, how is that factored in to the budget, and would we might be back at this table depending on the decision of the board or the commission or whatever?
Considering the annexation piece as a bundle, because we're unsure when it's going to happen. We didn't want departments going away and budgeting, assuming it's happening at certain times, and then it doesn't happen at certain times. So once we get a final date from the province on when this is going to happen and what we know we're going to get from it, then we will bundle together the revenue and the costs associated with it and bring it back to you as a council. Because at this point, we don't know whether it's going to be 16, 17, we have no idea. It's out of our control.
Any further questions? Councilor Thiessen?
Thank you, Mayor Bill. Ken, just to jump off of Helen's question there, I noticed when we were doing our capital tax the last time, 2017, there was a significant funding chunk. There's about $23 million, where everything else was a little closer to the top of what was recommended, but then we had $23 million. Was that the bundle of annexation that you're talking about that we're expecting or not expecting?
I don't understand your question. What $23 million?
Well, in our budget that was presented to us when we did our budget in 2015, 2016, and 2018, they were all significant amounts. And I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me right now. But the biggest difference was in 2017, where it seemed like there was like a huge drop in the amount of spending that we were doing, to the tune of just over $20 million or something. I was under the assumption when we were doing that last budget that was in anticipation for annexation. Is that money still sitting there, I guess, in 2017, or are we expecting that to go towards annexation purchases and stuff?
Well, this capital and operational plan is built exclusive of the results of annexation. We've not included it at any point in the discussions we've had with you. There are no costs reflected in here at all because we're, as I said, we're unsure to the timelines and we're unsure to the amount of land that the city will acquire.
Okay.
So that's something that would be set aside and it will be bundled and brought back to council once we have decisions made.
Thanks, Councillor Peetson. Any further questions for Mr. Anderson? Okay, I don't see anybody else in the queue. Ken, before I say we're moving on, did you have any other additional points? Any other themes you wanted to capture before we go around?
No, those are the only two I have, I think. Okay. I've given you what I think you need to know to move to the next stage.
Okay, thanks very much. So that being the case, then, Councillor, are we ready to, we'll start the round table. We'll go through, and my intention is to ask everybody once. We'll build our list, and then we can have discussion and debate on the list after we've built it. So I'm going to ask once, hopefully. I mean, as always, Ken referenced, and as we all know, the budget is council's budget, and so by a vote by the majority of council, we can always change the budget, review it. But the intention for process today, to make this as direct as possible, I suppose, is to ask everybody once so that we can have that opportunity to build a list. And so I hope that council members have come today thinking about the items that they wish to discuss. Okay, so if everybody's prepared to start on that basis, I think I'll start on my left. I know at least one council member over here had a list of items, maybe a couple. So Councillor Rice, did you have any items that you wish to flag for discussion or motions? And sorry, I want to be specific. It's not for discussion. At this point, we've discussed probably all the items. Ideally, you should be flagging something to say because there's a specific action that you wish to have taken. So, Councillor Rice.
Yeah, I think the process we went through to arrive at this point was fairly exhaustive and certainly one of the the more accepted processes. I do have a question. Normally when you're flagging something to bring something back, you have to be one of the people that voted for it to bring it back. Are we suspending that rule?
No, sorry, that's I should have said that as well. I sent that out in an email to council. I think the intention here is that council members that may have voted in support of something wish to, reconsider on sort of further review and in context of the whole budget with some time to digest over the holidays. That was the intention, is those people could do that. I don't think this is an opportunity for those who may have voted against something to ask their council members to vote against it again. The general idea is if you lost a vote to the majority of council, you lost, and you move on. But if there's something where you were in the majority and you say, well, wait a minute, I want to reconsider that position, which is fair, right? Additional information comes up or additional context, then today is the opportunity to do that. Okay?
Thank you.
So you had nothing to flag, Councillor Rice? Okay. Councillor Thiessen? Sure, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor Bill. I got a few things that I had flagged, so I'll start with the unfunding. Flag to unfund the Eastlink Center sound baffles.
So we'll go through your list. We'll just make sure everybody has a chance to find them and highlight them, or however the administration can track them. So the Eastlink Center sound baffles from the facility renewal reserve at $400,000
for 2015.
Okay.
Also, traffic signals 110, 107, 500,000 for 2016.
Okay. And those are both items under your unfunding list.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Now I have a list of going into other funding sources. Do you want me to cover that now too,
Sure,
Bill?
yeah,
Or?
please. We'll go through and we'll do each councillor's list in whole, and then we'll move on so we've got them all. Sure.
Okay, so for moving for other funding sources, I have refurbished wheelings, 350,000 in 2015.
And Councillor Thiessen, do you have a specific source that you're going to suggest that should come from?
I was going to look into general debenture.
Okay.
Is somebody going to put these up on the board?
Well, right now we're tracking them. I'm assuming that administration's writing them down, and that's why we'll take a second to make sure that we get all the details of what each council member is asking for, and we'll make sure that admin has them. I'm certainly highlighting them in my capital list. Okay, let's go ahead, Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you. I also have the Montrose Greenway, $2 million for 2016, again for general debenture. South Bear Creek Ball Diamond, $400,000 for 2016. Once again, general debenture. South Bear Creek Ball Diamonds.
The under community living, if you're following along in your capital budget binder, it's community living, Bear Creek South, 1 new ball diamond on west side, facility renewal reserve, and the suggestion is general debenture. Okay. Page 2.
I got paving on 92 and 92A. I believe that's Avon Street.
So I see that on page 7, under roads, near the bottom of the page, 92nd Ave paving, Park Road to 92A Street. Is that the one?
Yes.
Was MSI in 2017? Is that, am I right, Councilor Thiessen? Is that?
Yes, it was MSI 2017, yeah.
Okay. And
I had a question about that because I was wondering if we could use transportation levy reserve out of that.
okay, well, that's good to ask that question at this point, and then maybe we can, it may or may not affect whether you want to have it on the list. Director Galante, do you have any information on that?
Yeah. Thank you. In this case, potentially can be used as a local improvement as well. So we have a couple of alternatives to consider. So it's possible to analyze MSIs. However, we need to keep in mind the cap. And if we fund this project or unfund, we need to play with the numbers with others as well, as Mr. Anderson explained. But yes, it is possible to play with other options.
So let's. So what we'll do is we'll flag that one, and I'd like administration to confirm the potential sources of funding, because I would be curious of whether transportation system levy is actually possible. I'm betting that it's not, but we can put that on the table and throw our dollar in the pot and see who wins. Yeah, so because this is going from gravel to paved. But so we'll flag that one, and administration can find additional information about potential sources. Okay, Councilor Thiessen.
Actually, I had the same question on my next item, was the 112th Street roadway in the industrial sector for $1 million in 2018.
Okay, so again, we'll flag that, and administration can just confirm potential sources. So that's on the same page, page 7, just slightly above. Roads, 112th Street extension over railway tracks. Current source is federal gas tax fund. Okay. Okay, Councilor Thiessen, was there any other items on your?
The other one was traffic signals on 92nd and 132nd in 2018.
Currently MSI. And this one was you were looking at other sources of funding.
Yes.
And there's a question around.
Well, I had a question actually around all the traffic signals, but that's hence why I'm flagging them. I may remove or look for other funding sources, but I put this one here because I think I did vote for it, so I couldn't put it on the unfund list. So, okay. And then I did have one question in our minutes from our last council meeting with the playground replacement. It said that we had approved for $450,000, and I had made that motion for that. I didn't go on our YouTube channel to see what the actual motion was, but I didn't notice any amendments in our minutes, and the original funding for that was $400,000 over the course of 4 years. So I just wanted to know if we had amended that and just said $450 to cover all the playgrounds, or so that was my question on playground replacement, because it seemed like coming in at $50,000 extra a year without an amendment was kind of weird.
So I see it listed in our book as $450 per year for the 4 years.
Yeah, in our old capital book, it was set at $400,000 over 4 years.
So I do remember the discussion debate. The intention was to clear the list of projects. Mr. Anderson, do you have the minutes or some information?
Yes, I have the minutes from November 13 and 14, and Councillor Thiessen actually moved it, and it was approved to go to $450,000 per year for 15 through 18, and that's to cover all the final wooden structures. So that was approved by council.
So do you have any action on that, or just
I actually, I would like to move it into discussion if we could.
okay? For again,
Well, I definitely don't want to unfund it, but maybe, and I think we,
at a different level.
yeah, fund at a different level.
Page 11, about bottom third of the page, playground replacement program, in brackets 69006, capital tax 450 per year.
And that's all.
Okay, and so as we thanks, Councillor Thiessen. And so as we get to this, as we get to the discussion, so Councillor Thiessen, or any other council members, you've identified that you'd like to fund this at a different amount. I'd ask you to give some thought to what amount you'd like to fund it at, so that when we come to the discussion and debate, that you'd be ready to make a motion specific to, I move that we fund this at X level. Okay, excellent. Thanks very much for being so well prepared, Councillor Thiessen. Councillor Logan, did you have any items that you wish to discuss?
I'd like to echo Alderman Rice, Councillor Rice's comments. I think we put a lot of time and effort into this already. I was satisfied with the result. The municipal taxes are still the greatest deal out there, and I'd be looking to increase rather than drop things. So let's be careful. It's long-term pain that we may be building here.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Logan. Councillor McLean.
Said quite a few. I'm going to bring up, even though I voted for it, and I want to talk about is how the monies for change for funding for cemetery expansion and cemetery kiosk. That's one I'm bringing up.
So wait, let's just take our time here. Can you help us find that in the item?
No.
So you have a book like this.
Yeah.
And, is that under? Can somebody remind me? Is it under parks or is it under? Okay. So parks. I see. Yeah, top of page 4. Cemetery expansion currently is capital tax of 70,000. And where are the kiosks? Okay, well, sorry, actually, before we move on to the kiosks, Councillor McLean, what is are you looking to unfund something or different sources of funding, or what would you like to do?
Different source of funding to open up capital tax for hopefully reducing debt and bring it under the cemetery. We already did, but I want to bring it up again.
Okay, so cemetery expansion to change the source of funding.
Yep. And kiosks too.
Okay, where's kiosks?
Same page.
See, Muskogee Park.
No.
Park.
No, that's down further than. That's there.
Parks. Okay. Parks, cemetery kiosk, and block markers. Capital tax, 100,000 in 2015 and 100,000 in 2018. Okay. Just a second, Councillor Thiessen. We'll make sure we've got that. So, admin's got that one, and you're looking again at other source of funding. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. The other one is the leisure center for the upgrades. I want to look at possibly maybe unfunding it.
Okay. Where is the leisure center? Page 2. Page 2, leisure center, bottom of the list there. Leisure center upgrade, general adventure. Okay.
And Chris said quite a few of mine, which I was glad. But there was another one too. It was a Mississippi Park, and there's for upgrades, and we had kind of like two conflicting for garbage cans and this and that. It just seemed like it was inflated. But he said about the playground, which is changing the treated ones, and let's change them all out in 4 years. I like that. I just want to put it down at Mississippi Park. Which page? Don't know, Mayor Given, but it's there's a couple issues we did in Mississippi Park, and they kind of overrelate each other on.
So I
funding.
see. Well, we need to figure out exactly which
Yep.
ones we're talking about.
Which
So I
page
see Muskogee Park Infrastructure Replacement Program on page 4, just slightly above the cemetery kiosk that we just highlighted. It's listed as capital tax of $50,000 per year for the 4 years.
Yeah.
So there's that one, and maintenance garage, park kiosk signage, pond step, reservoir dock, spray deck, playground replacement, tool cat. So is there?
Yeah, there was two, but it's not putting the bell. But anyways, at least I flagged something.
So you want to flag the Muskogee Park Infrastructure Replacement Program? Is that correct?
Yeah, I think there might have been like garbage cans and stuff like that.
Okay.
There's a couple
You're flagging it to do what with it?
Well, to unfund it,
Unfund. Okay.
and that's good enough for me.
So I have on page 4. I have Muskogee Park Infrastructure Replacement Program. It's just slightly above the Parks Cemetery kiosk block markers that Councillor McLean highlighted. Okay. Okay. And Councillor McLean, that's your list.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor McLean. Councillor Radburn.
I just have one question, Ken. I'm looking at, where am I? I'm looking at Montreal Cultural Center structural deficiency and just kind of wondering, is that in addition? Are we getting warranty insurance monies to do that? Or is that over and above what we might glean from insurance or warranty?
Mr. Anderson?
There is no insurance money. We are seeking a legal remedy for that.
Okay.
It's unknown how successful that will be.
Thank you. I have nothing to add to the list.
Thanks, Councillor Radburn. Councillor Tarrant.
Thank you, Mayor Given. So as I was going over our list of capital items, I noticed I was quite reserved, so there's not very many that I could even flag if I wanted to. But, with that said, my issue with the budget was more on the operating side. I think there was a number of areas that were increased quite dramatically, and I think that's where the biggest hit for the tax increase that are coming from. And my fear in this review is that we'll start nickel and diming and taking away all these smaller one-time projects, as Ken has noted, that really aren't going to have that big of an impact.
Well, I think you're getting into the discussion debate.
Sorry.
In fairness, I think you'll have lots of opportunity to say that as we get to the specific projects that you think might fall into that category. So, don't mean to stifle the debate or discussion,
that's
but if you have items that we'd like to flag now,
No, and there is none.
none. Okay.
No.
Councillor Clayton.
I only had a few items, very few, and they've already been brought up.
They've already
So,
been brought up,
yep,
okay.
thanks.
And Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. To just say that the process that we went through beginning towards the end, I was getting a little mixed up and confused and tired, but I do feel that the process was fairly successful, and the only one that I did want to flag was already flagged, so I'm okay with that. So,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Councillor O'Toole. Okay, so council members, everybody's had an opportunity to flag the items. It's interesting or good, I think, to hear that there is some duplication, or at least some similar items that there was a desire to flag, so that's worthwhile. Maybe we'll take about a 10-minute break. I don't have any items to flag. Sorry, thank you. No, I don't have any items to flag. So we'll take about a 10-minute break. Administration can kind of make sure that they've got the list for us, that they heard us correctly. We'll make sure that we have that all done. And then we'll come back and we'll start from the top of the list and work our way down with discussion and debate. Again, I would ask council members to have specific motions ready. So if you're looking to unfund a project, that would be the motion. I move that we unfund X. If you're looking to change the amount of funding going towards a project, then again, that would be a motion. I moved that we fund project X to this amount for these years. And we'll have to be specific with our motions. And with that, then, Councillor Logan, do you have a question? Sure. Sure. So the question was to ensure that we just try to keep with the capital plan and note that page number. So maybe we'll, to allow administration enough time to gather all that, maybe we'll take 15 minutes, give ourselves a little bit of extra time. So we'll do that, and then we'll be back at, we'll say just after 10 o'clock. About 5 after 10 o'clock. Thank you. Okay, we're back. I believe administration has the list of flagged items, and we're going to start from the start. I'll look to the council member whose name is beside the item for motions, and we should be going directly into motions. There were a couple specifically that there was questions about potential sources of funding, so we'll hear from administration on those ones first, and then we'd move into motions. So if we can have the list up again. I think I saw Councillor Thiessen as the first there on page 2, Eastlink Center sound baffles. So Councillor Thiessen, I'll throw it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Bill. All right, with the Eastlink sound baffles, I had to reconsider after seeing the capital tax, and the reason why I bring this up is I view it as kind of a want rather than a need, and I think if we're looking to reduce taxes and move towards that, $400,000 can do a lot for our agenda as far as reducing these taxes. It was a close vote last time. It was a 5-4, and I did vote for it, but I'd be willing to rescind my vote and unfund this item for future years.
Okay, so you'll make that motion. You need to be, so again, we'll, move to ask everybody to be specific and make a motion. I move that.
I move that we unfund the Eastlink Center sound baffles for $400,000 in 2015.
Thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Okay, so that motion is up for discussion and debate. I see Councillor Tarrant.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I'll, I guess, now interject with my little speech here. I will be not be supporting this motion because, I feel that, with the capital, there's, as Ken had said, there's a lot of one-time items that are really not going to have a huge impact on taxes overall. With the sound baffles, once they're installed, there's no operational costs dealing with that. And as with most of these capital items, that there's no ongoing operational that's going to cost us more in the long run. And I was one of the ones that really supported this. I think that it's going to be great for hosting future events, and I think it's something that in all our surveys, that was one of the main concerns with the Eastlink Center was the sound, and I think that it's an important piece to have a part of it, and I really don't want to see us nickel and diming and cutting all these tiny little projects that really are not going to have any significant impact on the budget. We need to be looking at the bigger projects, especially the ones that have operational costs.
Thanks, Councillor Tarrant. Councillor O'Toole.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Given. I totally agree with Councillor Tarrant. I feel that the number one issue that we have at the Eastlink Center from concerns is the noise level, and this is something that we've addressed, and we were going to go forward with it. And for the minimal amount of cost, I know $400,000 seems like a high number, but it's a one-time deal, and it could be the cure for the noise, and I will not be supporting this motion.
Thanks, Councillor O'Toole. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I will be supporting this motion. I did not vote for it last time. And excuse me, but $400,000 in capital tax, if you direct it to lowering the rate, it's almost half a percentage, and I believe you start nicking the way there, and you can reduce it just with capital tax on lots of issues. So I'll be supporting it.
Okay, thanks, Councillor McLean. I will say that I won't be supporting the motion. I agree that this is a significant concern for the users of the facility. It was something that was specifically identified in the consultant's recommendations for what to do with the facility and aquatics facilities in general. This is, and not just a specific concern, or not a concern just for future events that we may host, but for current programming, specifically educational programming and Learn to Swim, where it's challenging for participants to hear instructors. So I think it's a major issue. I think this is a reasonable amount. And I also think it's important to note that the source of funding in the capital plan now is facility renewal reserve. So unfunding this will have zero impact on the tax rate because this comes from a current existing reserve. So I would encourage council to support this project and vote against the motion to unfund. Is there any other discussion or debate? I don't see anybody else. Councillor Thiessen, if you'd like to close. Okay. I don't see anybody else, so I will call for the vote. Again, Councillor Thiessen's motion was to unfund the sound baffles for the aquatics area at $400,000 in 2015. I'll call for the vote. motion does not carry. Okay. So we'll move on to the next on our list. We can have the list from administration's computer. Make sure that we have it up there. Traffic signals, page 8, 110th Street. So, Thiessen?
Listen, before I make a motion, Mayor Bill, I just like a little information. Originally in our budget, we had it marked as unfunded. Now, we added that to the budget. But Horacio, maybe you could give me a little more clarity as to why we left it unfunded in 2016 and if administration thought it was necessary to have those lights or not.
Director Galante?
Thank you, Mayor Given. I have a map here on the screen if you want to put there on the main screen so I can explain this zone as a bundle. Okay. So the particular traffic signal you're talking here is 110th Street and 107th Avenue that is located here. However, these three traffic signals here are kind of bundled together, ideally. So these three items have been identified on the Northwest road study, and it's anticipated that the intersections on 110th Street will be congested and the level of service, that is basically the time you have to wait to cross the intersection, number of seconds, will warrant signals when the new hospital opens. It's affecting the whole area. It's because of the hospital. Depending on the traffic patterns, 112th Street and 104 Avenue intersections may also become congested. And of course, none of these traffic signals can be funded using transportation levies, because only we can use transportation levies to fund projects related to growth on arterial roads. So we can analyze this as a bundle, the three lights, or when warranted, and we can wait until the hospital opens and analyze the traffic patterns, we can revisit this particular location you're pointing out here, or the three lights. But keep in mind that these three lights should be treated as a bundle, ideally.
Thank you, Director Galante. So currently, as we have it funded in our budget right now, it's only for the one lights. Am I correct? No, for the two of the three?
I see just above on page 8 is 110th Street and 104th Ave. That one is funded MSI in 2016. And then on the next page, page 9, there's unfunded the 112th, which is the one further to the west. Okay. 2017. So, Councillor Thiessen, and I guess one other thing I would say is if you're making a motion to, in situations like this where there's grant funding being used, if your intent is to leave the grant funding so it's available for other projects, or just, to leave it in the plan, then you need to specify that. If your intent is to use the grant funding to reduce the amount of capital tax used in the plan, right, that's the only way that would have an impact on the tax rate. Mr. Anderson, is that correct?
And there is minimal other funds than the grant. So if you look to remove this and replace it with another source of funding like capital tax, as you can see, at the end of 2018, there's under $200,000 left.
But, sorry, I just want to be clear. So, I mean, I think the intent of some of the items that were flagged was to reduce the overall tax increase. The only way of doing that here would be to unfund this project, so it's not contemplated to be done. Sorry, it's in the list, but it's not funded, and to use the $500,000 to replace capital tax somewhere else. Like that's the only way that you'd have an impact on the.
Well, that's correct. You could use capital tax. You could also argue the facility renewal reserve could be used for this as well.
No, sorry, I'm not talking about other sources of funding to do this project, because we're talking about traffic lights. I'm saying if you want, what happens if you unfund this, right? If you just unfund it, then the grants stay in the plan and it has zero impact on the tax increase. Just so that everybody has that understanding, right? Just unfunding it doesn't do anything to the 4.2%.
Correct.
Unfunding it and saying, I unfund it so that this 500,000 can be used to replace capital tax somewhere else, that could have an impact on the property tax increase. Is that correct?
Correct. There's really two motions, one to unfund and one to reassign the funds back to the operational plan and the tax increases.
Okay. So just because I want to make sure we're meeting the intent of what the person who flagged it was. So, Councillor Thiessen, do you?
Yeah, I'd still like to make the motion to unfund the traffic lights on 110 and 107.
Great. Thanks very much. Okay, so we have that motion on the floor, open for discussion and debate. Councillor Radburn.
Yeah, I was just a couple things. First of all, I think let's not understate the impact of even if we choose to unfund something, yes, there's a way to do it to reduce the tax burden, right, as Bill has pointed out. But unfunding can also give us some flexibility in these next 4 years, which is what Ken was trying to tell us. At our annual reviews, we might have some more flexibility to mitigate these risks that he identified earlier as well. So, yeah, anyway, that was a comment. I will be supporting this motion. I opposed funding of it previously, so I would certainly support this motion for the reason of providing us with some flexibility.
Thanks very much, Councillor Radburn. Councillor Rice.
I will be supporting the motion. I will be supporting the motion as I opposed it initially during the budget. I think administration did a very detailed report to us as to the rationale as leaving this unfunded in the budget, and the council opted to toss it in anyway. So I will be supporting Councillor Thiessen's motion.
Thanks, Councillor Rice. Any further discussion or debate? I don't see anybody else in the queue. Councillor Thiessen, do you want to say anything further?
No, let's vote.
Okay, I'll call for the vote. Okay, so everybody's clear. A vote in support of the motion would see this project unfunded, and at this point, that would just leave the grant available for other projects. Wouldn't dedicate it to reducing the tax increase. So I'll end that vote. That motion does carry. Were there any follow-up motions, Councillor Thiessen, on that one?
Just clarity. So we unfund it, so it's not affecting capital tax, but we're still leaving it in for potential future projects.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Our next item on the list. Page 3, refurbishment of Wheelings. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much. I would move that we change the funding source for the refurbishment of Wheelings for $350,000 in 2015 to general debenture.
Motion's in order. Thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Councillor Tarrant.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I think this would be financially irresponsible to go into debt for such a small project. You know, typically we use debentures for larger facilities that will want to sort of mitigate the cost over a long period of time, and so I'm supportive of some debt financing for larger items like the service center expansion. But when it comes to these little things, you know, I think it's better use to just use our capital taxes.
Thanks, Councillor Tarrant. And just to be clear, this is currently funded from the Facility Renewal Reserve and not capital tax. So just to be clear about the source funding, and I want to confirm that if we add items to general debenture, Mr. Anderson, that we're currently funded from a reserve, what would the impact on the tax rate be? Mr. Anderson?
When we have a debenture, we'd have to look at the length of time that we amortize it over, but there will be an impact on the operational side. It will go up.
So funding, if something is funded from a reserve currently, and we move that to a debenture, then the debt servicing costs would increase the percent tax increase. Is that correct?
Well, that's correct. I mean, it does go back to Facility Renewal Reserve. That policy was established by council. If council wanted to direct it back to the operational side, they could do that as well. But there won't be a full savings because there are costs to be realized through the servicing of the debenture.
Just so that we're clear on the impact of these different directions. Okay. Councillor Rice.
I'm somewhat split on this. I believe if you're ever going to have a debenture, it should be for a project like this, which I believe is going to make us money. The minute we get that place fixed up, I believe it will be a source of positive revenue. So I, however, feel I'm going to bow to Councillor Tarrant's rationale and say this is a small project to be borrowing for. So I won't be supporting the motion, although I do admit it has merit.
Thanks, Councillor Rice. Any further discussion or debate on the motion? So Councillor Thiessen's motion was to, make sure I'm on the right page, was to change the source of funding for the Bear Creek South refurbishment of WeLinks, which is on page 3, to change that source of funding from facility renewal reserve to general debenture. And the total amount of that was $340,000 in 2015. Any further discussion or debate? Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote on changing that source of funding to general debenture. That motion does not carry. Okay, next on our list. Montrose Greenway Concourse. Councillor Thiessen.
All right, thank you. Now, I don't have in front of me my current budget, but if I could just, someone could help me here with where our funding source is for the Greenway?
So the Montrose Greenway is currently listed in the budget with, it's got a couple of different funding sources. So in 2015, there's $45,000 of capital tax, or sorry, $30,000 of capital tax in 2015, and $45,000 from the Provincial Metropolitan Funding Grant. And in 2016, there is $1.2 million in provincial grant funding and $800,000 in capital tax. So it's sort of split funding with a smaller amount, obviously, for planning and design in 2015, and then the larger capital construction in 2016. And there's two different sources, the larger of which is the ACP Metropolitan Funding.
All right, well, thank you very much. Then I will move that for the year 2016, that we switch other funding sources from capital tax on the Montrose Greenway of $800,000 to general debenture.
Okay, so specific to the 800,000, so essentially 800,000 of borrowing.
Yep.
Okay. So that motion is in order. So we have a motion to change the source of funding for the Montrose Greenway Concourse construction in 2016 to recognize $800,000 of debenture borrowing. Okay. Open for discussion and debate. See any discussion or debate? Councillor Radburn?
Thanks, Mayor Given. So Ken, just tell us the implications of that, please.
Mr. Anderson?
Well, the implications are there will be debt servicing required. We'd need to determine the length of the time that the debenture would be taken for. It would be tied to the life of the asset. Usually what we do is we have the borrowing be less than the life of the asset, and those debt servicing costs fall into the operational side.
Yes, but does the reduction commensurately, does the reduction of $800,000 capital tax reduce the operational budget and reduce the tax increase?
Well, as I explained earlier, if you decided to reduce the $800,000 in 16, what would do would reduce the tax rate by 0.8% in 16, but that would be offset by a 0.8% increase in 17 because it just moves along. So 17 becomes a 5.0.
Yeah.
Any further discussion or debate? I don't see any. No. Then I'll call for the vote. A vote in favor would change that $800,000 in 2016 from capital tax to general debenture. I'll start the vote. Thank you. And that motion does not carry. the next on our list? Wall Diamonds, West Side, page 2. South, Wall Diamonds. One new diamond. West Side, currently listed Facility Renewal Reserve. Councillor Thiessen, I believe you wanted to look at the source of funding.
Yeah, and I think I got my clarity on that one, so we can withdraw this.
Thank you. So we'll move to the next item on that list. Have it back up again. 92nd Street paving, page 7. Okay, so at the bottom of page 7, we have roads, 92nd Ave, paving, Park Road to 92A Street. Current list of MSI grant funding of $805,000 in 2017. And Councillor Thiessen, I think you had some questions about potential sources of funding. So should we look to Director Galante on some information? Director Galante?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the project will qualify for MSI as a source of funding. However, there is an option to try local improvement program called as LEAP. However, we require property owners' consent. So there is no guarantee that in this case we can use that option. We can explore that, but there is no guarantee. It's not only paving, it's curb and gutter, street lights, so it's a significant amount compared with just paving the section. Council approved as part of this capital budget a storm line that has to be built first before proceeding with the curb and gutter, street lights, and paving. So we can explore local improvement program as well, but again, keep in mind that there is no guarantee that that's going to succeed. The other option is MSI. We cannot use transportation levies because it's not an arterial road.
So you got the information you were looking for?
Yeah, and I would move that that we give it a stab and we go for that we move funding source for paving 92nd and 92nd A to local improvement funding.
Okay. So Councillor Thiessen's motion is to move that to a local improvement as a funding source.
If I may too, Bill. I think if we're looking for property owners' consent on this one, I think paving of that road, I don't foresee any obstacles for people like actually having the road paved towards a residential neighborhood. So if that's their only roadblock and obstacle, even though it's not a guarantee, I'd be willing to roll the dice on that one.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Thiessen. Councillor Rice.
I wonder if administration had recommended that funding source as opposed to local improvement, their rationale for not bringing this forward as an alternative.
Director Galante.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The likelihood of success is very low. The success is very low because a significant amount, we're not talking only paving, but curb and gutter, street lights, all the full road construction. So in other projects, if we go to history, the likelihood of success has been much higher when only the asphalt has been in place, but this is not the case. So when we run the calculations for the share that the property owners will have to contribute here is much higher, and probably when they see the numbers, again, the likelihood will be lower in this case. For that reason, we didn't recommend that.
I would also say, so I won't be supporting the motion on the basis that this is a really challenging project to localize to one area. I think it's a road that many people travel through to get to their neighborhood, but they likely wouldn't be subject to the local improvement levy. I think local improvements are generally applied to properties that either are directly adjacent, like touching the road, and I think the majority of this traffic is actually through traffic. So I think it's completely appropriate to fund as a general benefit, because the city as a whole benefits, and many neighborhoods that aren't directly adjacent to it, that don't actually touch this piece of road, benefit from it. And so I think it's reasonable for that cost to be shared amongst all of those neighborhoods, where a local improvement would only be those that are specific touching it, and they're not the only direct beneficiaries. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I'll be supporting this because I believe it's a bit contradictory. There's more stuff included in this, yes, and ultimately, most likely, the local companies that attach to it will say thank you, but no thank you. But you have other areas where lots of people use on the west side for environmental, where we couldn't get that paid for years because we couldn't come to an agreement. Then you have over 102nd, or by 132nd Ave, 102nd Street, or 103rd. I believe we should at least be asking, because I can see others coming from behind and saying, you know what, we couldn't do it, but you did it here and you didn't even ask there. So I'll be supporting it.
Okay, thanks, Councillor McLean. Councillor Logan.
Yes, to my surprise, I think I'll be supporting the motion as well. I think that a tremendous amount of the building of the infrastructure that propelled Grand Prairie's growth over decades came from local improvement taxes. Thinking of back 50s, 60s, and 70s, it was a major funding tool that helped keep the general level of taxation down. And part of the reason why the businesses, property owners of the time, were willing to do that was because of the dramatic increase in property values that they had as a result of that infrastructure being built. So I think this is a reasonable request, and I'll be supporting it.
Thanks, Councillor Logan. Councillor Clayton.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I guess my first thing is I have a question for administration. I was wondering if Director Galante could tell me the time frame, if you were to change the funding source as the motion states, is it realistic for the project still to happen as in the time that was the year that was indicated, which I think is 2017? If at that time it doesn't get the support that's required, how much time is this delaying the overall project if it needs to come back to council for the initially suggested form of funding?
Director Galante.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We can initiate the process to ask the neighbors and run the numbers to provide the financial information for the different contributions, city and private property owners in 2015 and get the results during this year. And then if the answer is no, at the end of 2015, when we do the mini budget review, we can inform council and propose MSI again as a source of funding.
Thanks very much. Councillor Rice.
Question, would there be additional costs involved in terms of getting the permissions? First of all, you have to identify who you're going to ask, who would be affected. So would there be an additional cost in terms of getting, looking at whether or not this gamble paid off?
Director Galante.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It will involve staff time to do cost estimating and preliminary design and some cost estimating to provide information to the property owners.
We don't appear to have extra staff sitting around, so does that mean something else wouldn't get done?
It will be some funds involved in terms of the engineering design, preliminary design at least, to run the cost estimates. We have nothing so far. We need some sort of design in order to run the calculations to communicate this to the property owners.
Anything further? I don't see anybody else in the queue, so we'll call for the vote on Councillor Thiessen's motion that would change the funding source for this project, which was the 92nd Avenue paving from Park Road to 92A Street from MSI in 2017 of $805,000 to local improvement. Okay. So a vote in favor would make that change of funding source. I'll call for the vote. Thank you. And that motion carries. Okay. So what was our next item on our list? The next was 112th Street extension over railway tracks. Councillor Thiessen.
I'm going to have to ask for assistance to my councilmates or administration as to the funding source currently. I know I haven't.
Sorry. Yep. Sorry. So it's page 7 of our current plan recognizes as federal gas tax fund. So the grant monies of $1 million in 2018.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm fine with that.
So nothing on that one. And our next on our list there was traffic signals at 92nd Street and 132nd Avenue. That was on our page 9 of our plan. This is currently listed as MSI, $500,000 in 2018.
Now, Horacio, I was just wondering if you could, with knowing where you can delineate the funding of traffic signals and stuff is a little tough. Is there any other sources of funding that we could shift to that instead of taking out of our MSI and further depleting it?
Vante?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Councillor Thyssen, in this case, we can use transportation levies. This is an arterial road on 132nd, so we can explore that. This set of traffic signals have been identified on the 92nd Street functional study. We presented that to committee recently as part of the Mr. Mike's area. The lights, as part of the study, have been warranted in 2018. So this will qualify to be funded using transportation levies. So we can explore that source of funding as well.
Okay. Councillor Thiessen, then?
Yes, so with that knowledge, I'd like to move that we shift our funding from MSI for the traffic signals on 92nd and 132nd to the transportation levy reserve.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Open for discussion and debate. So this motion would have the effect of leaving the project as funded, but changing the source of funding from MSI to Transportation System Levy Reserve. Discussion or debate? I'll say I'll be supporting the motion. This won't have at this point, won't have a impact on the property tax increase, but it does leave at future council additional flexibility by leaving more grants available. And I believe that's appropriate, especially this far out in the plan, because between now and 2018, there's obviously a significant likelihood of there being changes or different things that council wishes to address. So I support having that additional flexibility. Any other discussion or debate? Again, I don't see any, so I'll call for the vote. Thank you. And that motion carries. Okay, and what was next on our list? We have a page 2 to this list of items. So while administration is make sure that we get the next slide up, Councillor McLean has a motion on one of those flagged items that Councillor Thiessen declined to make a motion on. Go ahead, Councillor McLean, turn your microphone on.
On 112, I had a quick question for Ken before I make the motion. It was considered as unfunded. How are you funding that through MS? What was the funding for that service road on 112 going over the railroad tracks? $1 million.
Federal gas tax fund.
Federal gas tax fund.
So grants.
All grants. I'm going to make a motion because I think that park's been there almost 50 years. It's survived, and we can use it for other things to free up, and that when we have and $50 a barrel of oil, it survived for 50 years. So I'm going to make a motion that 112 be unfunded.
Okay. So we're on page 7. The project is near the bottom part of the page. It's called Roads 112th Street Extension over Railway Tracks. Current source of funding is the Federal Gas Tax Fund, and it's listed as $1 million in 2018. So Councillor McLean's made a motion to unfund that project. Yeah. And so that motion's in order. It was one of the flagged items. And Councillor Clayton.
I won't be supporting the motion, although I can relate. I understand Councillor McLean's concerns. I think this is essential in moving traffic through an area that continues to grow for us, and on the west end of town, we continue to see concerns with traffic flow as we grow our commercial and our industrial tax base to the west. We need to ensure that our movement and transportation is upgraded, and this is the first step in my mind.
Thanks, Councillor Clayton. Councillor Tarrant.
Mayor Given, I will not be supporting this, and I strongly urge other council members to not support this motion. I think this linkage is crucial in the Richmond Industrial Park. I think it serves, there's sort of two main benefits I see out of it, is that it'll defer a lot of the traffic away from 116th and 108th, and it'll facilitate the better movement of traffic within the park. And the second thing is, since the service center is right there, I think it'll provide some operational efficiencies for getting our equipment out to the south easier.
Thanks, Councillor Tarrant. Any further discussion or debate? Okay, so I don't see anybody else in the queue. Councillor McLean, do you want a chance to close?
My closing, Mayor.
Is your microphone on?
Yeah, I think it is. Mic active. The red dot ain't on, but it's.
I think it is.
How things are working in this council chamber over the last few years with putting money in, I don't know. So anyways, I was just going to say, this industrial park's been there 50 years. Oil's $50. There's already layoffs happening. So I think it's help the service center. They have to go a couple blocks. It survived for 47, 48 years. So I hope people do vote for it.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor McLean. I'll call for the vote. Councillor McLean's motion was to unfund this project in the capital plan. So motion in favor would unfund the project. Start the vote. Thank you. That motion does not carry. Okay, so do we have that, Councillor O'Toole?
Given, I was wondering if possibility to move the funding date up, if that's a possibility, and why was that particular year chosen?
So we can ask administration about their recommendation on the year or the timing.
Yes.
And certainly there's a project that was on our list, and if Councilor has a motion to change the date, then that's something that we could do. Does administration have any comment on the timing, the recommended timing of 2018? Mr. Galante?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When administration created the proposed budget, we tried to balance the amounts 15, 16, 17, and 18. As you pointed out, the service center has been there for a number of years, and the current configuration has been there for many years. So city's growing, traffic is seeing a significant increase in the area. However, in order to balance the first portion of the budget, 2015 and 16, we considered prudent to allocate funding in 2018 for construction of this project. We will start the design probably in 17 and then physical construction in 2018. That's the main rationale.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given and Mr. Galante. I really do feel that this is going to make a huge impact in the industrial park. It'll reduce traffic binding situations at some key intersections now, and I think that we're doing a wonderful thing here by funding this and going forward. Thank you.
Okay, so no motions arising then?
No motions.
Okay. Okay, so we're back onto our list of items. That looks very familiar. Is there another page? There we go. Okay. So the next item, Councillor Thiessen, was Playground Replacement Renewal Program, page 11. Councillor Thiessen.
Right. So, yeah, I just had confusion when I was going over all my notes. And I was trying to rack my memory. And like I said, I never went on our YouTube channel. But there was no amendment to the amount funding. And the original amount was for $400,000 over the years. I believe the extra $50,000 was to make sure that we had all the parks done by the end of 4 years. I don't know. It feels a little rich for my blood right now. So I'm going to move that we reduce funding for playground replacement to $350,000 per year.
Okay, so that's a specific motion. Councillor Thiessen will move that the playground replacement program that's funded by capital tax be reduced to $350,000 per year for each of the 4 years of the budget cycle. Okay, so that motion's in order. Open for discussion and debate. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mayor Given. Just a question to administration. This money was to replace 4 of the older playgrounds of treated wood. Is that correct?
Mr. Anderson, I believe this is facilities. Is that correct?
That's correct. We're getting rid of the ones that were treated wood. We're going to plastic, PVC. This would, $450,000 over the 4 years would conclude the replacements.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I just will not be supporting this, not because I don't agree with reducing. I would like to see it 800,000 taken out and survive, take 2 and do 2 the next council. But I can't support it. I think it's just a small gesture.
Councillor Clayton.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I also won't be supporting this motion, although I can appreciate Councillor Thiessen's intent. I think that, first of all, the safety to do with the treated wood is not something that we can delay on. And second of all, with such a young population, as we all know, it needs to be a priority for this council. So I encourage you to vote against this motion.
Thanks, Councillor Clayton. I don't see anybody else in the queue. Any other discussion or debate on the motion? Okay, seeing none, then I'll call for Councillor O'Toole.
Just wondering, given how many parks would this the current funding support in refurbishing?
So the current 450,000, how many does it do, Mr. Anderson?
Remedies 9 playgrounds, $200,000 each.
Okay, so 9 playgrounds over 4 years was the answer there. Okay, Councillor Rice. Sorry, Councillor Rice, just make sure your microphone's on.
Is there not a trend that we've seen emerging where community groups are actually raising funds to do these playgrounds?
Mr. Anderson?
There is some of that when it relates to schools and playground equipment there. These are neighborhood parks.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion or debate? Councillor Rice?
No, I'm good, thank you. Sorry.
Okay, then I'll move to the vote. A vote in favor would see the amount reduced to $350,000 per year for each of the 4 years. Thank you. That motion does not carry. Okay. Our next item on the list, now we move to Councillor McLean's item. Back on page 4 of our capital plan was the cemetery expansion. Make sure we're all on the right one here. So page 4, cemetery expansion near the top of the page was listed as capital tax of $70,000 in 2015. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I'm just going to go after this again. I do believe nickel and dime capital tax would help quite a bit in the way of reducing taxes, but we don't have them usually gone that way. I'm going to try it again for both items.
Let's just do one at a time.
Okay.
Individual items.
Okay, so which was the first one they had on there?
Cemetery
expansion, capital, not capital tax, to change it to cemetery reserve, take it out of cemetery reserve.
Okay. So a change of source of funding from capital tax to cemetery reserve. Okay, correct? Okay, so that motion's in order. Councillor Rice.
Clarification, cemetery reserve is my assumption is money that we are holding in trust. People pay it to us and they for perpetual care. So it is in essence, well, it isn't the normal kind of trust. It's that that's what the people assumed was going to happen when they paid us that money. Is that not correct?
Well, that's partially correct. The funds that are transferred to the reserve are city funds. I mean, there's some revenue that comes in, but it's not sufficient to deal with this issue. My suggestion to you on this matter and the following matter is that you refer this back to committee and ask for a review of the cemetery reserve policy, and should there be sufficient funds in it, possibly these projects could be funded off through that means until we have a real good understanding of what's required to go forward as for perpetual care. It's probably not appropriate to do it right now.
Okay, so I think there was already a motion at the budget to review that reserve. I think city manager has it there. There was a specific motion to refer. Yeah, Councillor Logan made that referral motion. So that review is being done. So Councillor McLean's motion is specific to changing the source of funding today from capital tax to cemetery reserve. Sure, just a second. Any other discussion or debate? I'll just say that I won't be supporting the motion. The cemetery reserve is otherwise known as the cemetery perpetual care reserve. The intent is that it's a reserve that's able to handle the post-closure, after the cemetery is full, that it can handle the maintenance and operation of that and care of that area perpetually. And so I'm quite, I believe I remember that we had a review of this reserve last council term, maybe the one prior to that, and there were specific markers that were set, and I don't believe that we're there yet, and I think this is an example of long-term thinking that's required by local governments. So I won't be supporting the motion. Councillor McLean to close.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to try to close again. I'm trying to save up capital tax monies to reduce debt. Two things. It's always been that the individuals that have passed on and they spent the money, that this was it. It's a very small portion. It's actually people living today. It's putting the money in this to support it. 170, 180,000 a year. I'd like to know the numbers of what's been put in. It's very small. And but I think if you're going to need money as it is today to support it, and I'm looking forward to discussion at committee, but I'm trying to free up capital tax. So, and then the markers that Mr. Mayor Given has said, my first term in council, the big project was $1.8 million for this. Then all of a sudden, near the end of last council, administration came forward and said, I think we're going to need $6 or $8 million now to do this. So, talk about numbers all you want, but sometimes they're just thrown out for whatever reason, and you can just guess and guess and guess. So, the markers can be put wherever. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McLean. I don't see anybody else in the queue, and that was to close, so I'll call for the vote. The motion was to change the source of funding from capital tax of $70,000 in 2015 to utilization of the cemetery reserve. So leaving the project funded for $70,000, just changing the source of funding from to utilize that reserve. So I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion does not carry. Okay. Next item on the list, I think, was Councillor McLean. Kiosk and block markers. Also page 4, a little bit further down. Again, this is a capital tax item, currently in the plan at $100,000 in 2015. Councillor McLean. Just make sure your motion's on.
I'm going to turn on the mic. Mayor Gibbon, I want this to be changed to cemetery reserve from where it's going after capital tax. Okay. That's the motion.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor McLean. Any discussion or debate on that motion? Seeing nobody ringing in, I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion does not carry. The next item on our list was the Leisure Center upgrade, page 2. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I'll make my motion, and then I'll speak to it afterwards for closing. To unfund the Leisure Center for the next 4 years, the funding.
Okay. So the motion would be to unfund the general debenture of $5 million over the next 3 years.
Yep.
I'll open for discussion debate. Councillor Rice.
I urge you not to support this motion. We heard loud and clear from the community. We took lots of heat. They want this facility open. When it was approved in the budget, we had received, or it was assumed to be approved in the first go-around of budget discussions. We received many compliments. I urge you, don't be foolish and step away from that decision now. It was a subject of intense discussion that council collectively determined made the most sense. So I, as I say, urge you, do not support this motion.
Thanks, Councillor Rice. Councillor Tarrant.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I will be supporting this motion, and as I've said in the past, I don't think that this facility, while a smaller facility would be a great addition to our community, I don't think right now is the time, and I don't think that upgrading the leisure center is the most financially prudent way to go about it. I'd be supportive in in a number of years to be looking at another smaller facility, but I just, the numbers are not there. We had a study done that just do not show that we would have be able to support this facility. It's going to be 70% subsidized. It's not only are we looking at this capital, but if it doesn't go through, you've got to remember that's $1 million, $1.1 million, which escalates every year. Starting in 2017, that's going to be cut out of the budget, and I just do not feel that it's financially prudent at this time.
Thanks, Councillor Tarrant. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Mayor Bill. I'm actually quite shocked that this came up on the board, but especially from the source. But I'm going to also urge Council to please not support this motion. As Councillor Rice already stated, the community has urged us and spoken very strongly in support of us reopening this pool. And it makes sense. The numbers are there, despite what Councillor Tarrant is saying. 12% of our population is under the age of 5. We have a 3-month wait time for swimming lessons currently right now. I would argue that potentially the deficiencies that we're seeing at the Eastlink Centre are more of management deficiencies and operational deficiencies rather than the actual pool deficiencies. I do believe there's a need in our community for this. It's logically placed too. It's within walking distance of 4 schools, an elementary, junior high, and 2 high schools. It serves the county, it serves the city, it serves the residential areas that surround it, from Mount View to Avondale to Royal Oaks. Please, people, we already voted for this. Yes, we know it's going to be a pinch, but let us continue forward with this and not disappoint our public. They elected us to do responsible things. Sometimes you have to take the hit for the community, and I believe this is a hit we need to take.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Thiessen. I'll inject myself into the middle of the conversation here rather than at the end. I've been consistent in not supporting reopening of the Leisure Centre for many of the reasons Councillor Tarrant mentioned. I believe we have excellent resource that can be better utilized, and once council determines that it's fully utilized, then I could support reopening and investing more in aquatics infrastructure. The size and scope of this project to duplicate something that we already have is untenable to me, and that's why I haven't been able to support it. I do want to address one comment about the physical infrastructure at Eastlink Centre. The main reason we can't have more lessons is because we only have so much shallow pool space. If we had more shallow pool space at the Eastlink Centre, we could have more lessons. And administration and our consultants presented a much less expensive option to give us more shallow pool space at the Eastlink Centre that would have no increased operating costs. That would have been a way to address the demand for lessons. No increase to operating costs and approximately $1 million. That's the type of solution that I think would be financially responsible and meeting the needs of the community. I 100% recognize that in terms of location, you can't move the Eastlink Centre. It is where it is. And so I can appreciate that residents on the north end of the city would appreciate having this facility open to them. But the feedback that I've heard is a concern about the scale of this project, duplication, and the cost. And so for those reasons, I will continue to not support the reopening and given the opportunities, and I would be supportive of Councillor McLean's motion to see it as unfunded. Councillor Logan.
I
feel the, is that on?
The lights on this half of this desk seem to not be working, so I just have to listen to see if I can hear you.
I'm diametrically opposed to Mayor Given's position on this. I've argued from the beginning that we can use the leisure center pool. It can service the community, can service needs that are going to extend into the future. My real concern about cutting it off at the lakes now is that if we mothball it, we're going to see deterioration. It's going to be extremely difficult to reopen the facility ever if we don't put the money into now and get it open so it's active. I would urge council to support the reopening of the facility. I think it's wanted. I certainly have heard that it's wanted.
Thanks, Councillor Logan. Councillor Clayton.
Thank you, Mayor Given. From the beginning, I also have not supported the opening of this pool. I think that unfortunately there may be perception that public outcry is to open this pool. It was based on some information that doesn't facilitate on an 8-hour schedule. Clubs that want to use this pool aren't going to have the time that they think they want or that they need based on an 8-hour schedule that we currently are funding in our operations. The facility is old. It's going to end up costing us more than we think. It's going to be operationally at a huge deficit. Our current facility is underutilized. I think that we do have a need for another pool. I don't think this is the location. I don't think that refurbishing such an old pool will ever be in our benefit in our inventory of facilities, and I strongly encourage council to support this motion.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Clayton. Councillor Terrence.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I just want to add a couple more points. First of all, in regards to Councillor Logan's comment that this facility would deteriorate, I think that there's, if this motion does go through, I think there's an option for other dry use facilities at that particular location that I think could meet. There's lots of other needs in the communities that could use that at a significantly lower cost, and so I think that there's other recreational options. So it wouldn't have to be mothballed; it would just be retrofitted. I wanted to make a point about support. The survey. So the number of people that wanted to have the 8-hour facility represents only 1% of our entire population. So it's hard to judge whether that's significant support. And then the last point I wanted to make was that of all the items that were flagged here, this is really, if there is a desire from council to have a lower tax rate, this is really the only project that will make a significant dent in our taxes.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Tarrant. Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you very much, Mayor Given. I've talked to a number of people that were quite happy that the last time we discussed it, we were going to open the pool. But they also mentioned to me that they didn't really want a complete facelift. This was way too much money to invest in the pool. They just want to have water and a fresh coat of paint. And I was wondering if there was any opportunity to address the amount of upgrades that we would put into this sometime.
Okay, Mr. Roth, do you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Your Worship. The quotes that we've received in the project as planned is essentially to replace any infrastructure issues. So there is some structural problems with the building itself that need to be repaired, as well as repairing mechanical issues. It's not as simple as just putting water back into the pool. There are repairs that are required because of the age of the building in order to do that. There isn't a lot of other significant renovations planned. It would look very much similar to it as now, with the exception of it'll be modernized as we go. So new tile, new paint, that type of thing. The project does have a lot of significant amount of dollars invested in the infrastructure replacement and the mechanical upgrades.
So just to clarify, so really the project is the size that it is because the mechanical systems, the underlying infrastructure require it for it to operate. Is that a fair way to state that? Just to be.
That is correct. Yes.
Thank you very much for your explanation.
Councillor Radburn.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I think this is about the 6th time we voted on this in the last few years, and that's frustrating to me. But I respect the process, and I will restate that I will continue to support the funding of this project. And much of it has been said. For me, it's about location. It's about protecting an asset that I think we're going to need sooner than we think. It's about user groups who are not comfortable using the larger facility. And I recognize it's significant investment, but I think I would support it for the community.
Thanks, Councillor Redburn. Councillor Clayton.
Sorry, just one last comment. I did hear a lot of feedback from community members that initially when they took the survey, location was a huge asset to the facility. However, there was some assumption out there that the facility would be, because it was not to the level of the facility EastLink Center is, that it would be at a lesser user fee for people, and people thought it was going to be a more affordable option. After people have realized that it's going to be at the same fees, similar fees to the EastLink Center, I really want council to think about the fact that if we put all this money into this pool and we budget for the capital as well as the operational, and this pool isn't utilized to the expectations that administration is thinking, we're going to have a big pile of money sitting there doing nothing for us, and it's a big concern. And I think that although that there is a need for this pool or a pool in the future, unfortunately, I don't think it's yet. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Clayton. I don't see anybody else in the queue, so if there isn't, then I will come back to Councillor McLean to close. Councillor Radburn, if you want to say something further?
Quickly, I think council can decide the hours. We'd have something in the budget. If we need to change that, we will. If we choose to change the fees, we will. That's all in council's hands. So to assume that it's not going to work is, I think, not fair. Thank you.
And so we'll go to Councillor McLean then to close. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mayor Given. It's probably one of my most hard motion ever made. I'm very proud of council and administration. We never had a capital budget or operation budget in 40 years to come back and look at. I do think that there should be more of this happening. We are the highest in property taxes in the province. We are a $50 barrel of oil. I'm going to finish. Thank you, Councillor Rice. And the province of Alberta is going to make a lot of different changes that are going to affect us in the next year or two if the oil doesn't come up. And the price is almost 3 times from when it could have been passed council before, which it didn't. And I'm very proud of it. I would love to have it, but I think if you're going to decline a capital budget or in a way it can safely help, and I know it's what happened today, this would make the biggest impact.
Okay, thanks, Councillor McLean. To close. So we'll call for the vote. The motion was to unfund the $5 million in the capital budget. And I will call for the vote on that motion. So a vote in favor would see that project as unfunded. And that motion does not carry. So I think we had another item on our list. Arterial roadway trail park furniture. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I'd like to make a motion to unfund this. Monies of 200,000 or 50,000 a year, whatever it is. I'll speak to it if there's.
Sorry.
I'll close it.
Sure. And I'm sorry, I've missed my page there. Which page were we on? Thank you. Sure. Yeah. So I actually see Muskosipi Park Infrastructure Replacement Program was the one that we had discussed. So there's up above. So, okay. So administration picked a different one. The one that I have highlighted is Muskosipi Park Infrastructure Replacement Program, capital tax of $50,000 per year for the 4 years.
It's artillery.
Okay, so you're so there's a different one.
Yeah.
Then. So okay, so council. So we're talking about then actually at the top of page 4, arterial roadway trail park furniture enhancement plan, and that's a item that's capital tax of $51,438 per year for the 4 years. Okay. And so, Councillor McLean, your motion was to see that as unfunded?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. What's the motion to unfund that project? Open for discussion debate. Councillor Tarrant.
Thank you, Mayor Given. I will not be supporting this motion. I will remind council that this was already reduced in half. There was an additional $200,000 originally, and there was a motion made to cut those in half. I really think it's an important part. Again, it's a small infrastructure program. There's no operational costs, very minimal operational costs. I should note associated with it, and I think it's going to go a long way to provide the benches and the garbage cans and all those different amenities that will make the quality of life much better for residents. And I think it also supports our community mobility plan. It's a huge part of that.
Thanks, Councillor Tarrant. Any other discussion or debate? I don't see anybody in the queue. Councillor McLean. Anything?
Yeah, I'm just gonna close it. Thank you, Mayor Given. It's new stuff. It's not there. The other one is replacing stuff that is there, and that's about $200,000. So, trying to save some money and reduce taxes. I hope people vote for it.
Thanks very much, Councillor McLean. So I'll call for the vote. The motion was to see this project unfunded for each of the 4 years. Councillor Rice, you had a question?
Legacy project that we were working with the Rotary Club on the 100th anniversary, right? This would be.
This is different.
This is the other areas. Okay. Just wanted to confirm that. Thank you.
Okay, so again, I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion does not carry. And was that the conclusion of our list? I've seen Mr. Anderson say that it was. So I believe that was the list of items for review that council members identified. Now I, at the outset, asked council members to make specific motions. We did that. We did a roundtable. I will want to ensure that everybody feels that they had adequate opportunity to discuss the budget. Are there any other items that anybody would wish to bring forward? If there aren't any additional items at this time, then I would look for a motion from Council Committee of the Whole to refer the capital budget to the next council meeting. Councillor Thiessen.
So moved.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Thiessen. Open for discussion and debate. Seeing none, then I'll. Oh, sorry, Councillor Tarrant.
Can we, before we refer, can we see where we're at? Do we have an idea?
Mr. Anderson.
For recap here, there's 3 projects that you changed. Traffic signals, 110 Street, 107 Avenue was unfunded, so that saved $500,000 MSI. 92 Ave paving was $805,000. It was MSI and it's changed to a local improvement. Traffic signal, 92 Street and 132 Ave was $500,000 originally from MSI. It's been changed to a transportation levy. So what the cumulative effect is that we've saved $1.805 million in MSI, which allows some flex room over the next 4 years and deals with some of the risks.
So just to clarify right now, so that 1.8 million just gives us the flexibility, so we have no effect on tax rates whatsoever.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Thiessen still has a motion to refer forward to council. Any further discussion? Seeing none, then I'll call for the vote. Thank you. That motion carries. I believe that concludes our business for this morning. Thanks very much, everybody.